Hey guys, this is Courtney from Will's Bloom, and this is the Astrobiz podcast, where we talk about astrology and business. And Will's Bloom is the parent of this podcast, and it's all about intentionally designing our life and business with the cosmos. Hey guys, before we get into today's interview, which is with my teacher, Alex Cattoni, I just wanted to remind you that the doors are closing on the Business Foundations course using astrology on Monday. So please enroll now if you're interested, and it's really going to help you guys establish a complete foundation of all the internal systems of a business. There's not very many courses out there that go over how to set up the back end of the business that actually leads to growth and success, and that is exactly what we do. It takes 3 months, and we're going to meet every single week. And the whole course is actually going to be surrounded around your personal birth chart. So we'll start off with a personal one-on-one astrology reading together, where I will show you what all the stars mean about you and your life purpose and your personality. And then we bring that to life in your business and create a personalized business plan and strategy based off of your astrology chart. You guys, it's going to be so special, and I really hope that you join me. It's going to be so much fun. So don't forget to check out willowsbloom.com. It's on the course section, and I can't wait to see you there. Now let's stay tuned for Alex Cattoni. Alex was a copywriter for MindValley for many years. She also does copywriting for numerologist.com, and she has her own copywriting company, and now she teaches copywriters or up-and-coming copywriters all of her strategies and tactics. So her interview is so amazing. She really guides us through her whole process of how she found her life purpose and how she does what she does. So stay tuned. All right. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for coming on. Today, we're going to be talking about marketing and all about copywriting. Alex Cattoni, you can find her on YouTube and on the Copy Posse. She is my teacher, and she's super wonderful. She's been an incredible and inspiring copywriter for many, many years. And I'm so excited to share her knowledge with you guys. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Courtney. I'm really happy to be here.
What's your story? How did you get into copywriting to begin with?
Yeah, I get this question a lot because I think it's probably no surprise to people who, wind up sort of in this entrepreneur world. It's never a straight path or an obvious one. But my whole life dream when I was in high school was to be a lawyer. And I went to university and studied business law and I went to university, studied business, majored in business law, and was planning to apply to law school. And it was in the summer before applying that I realized I just wasn't quite sure if that was it for me and if that was the path for me. And I'm so glad I listened to that little voice inside. At the time I decided I was just going to defer it for a year because, of course, deciding I was totally putting that off the table was a bit scary, but I decided to defer it for a year. And then I applied for a internship at a large marketing company actually based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, called MindValley. And back then it was a tiny little startup. I don't know, I was like maybe employee like 8 or 12, like very, very new. And yeah, basically decided, okay, I'm going to move to Southeast Asia for 6 months and do an internship with this personal development company doing customer service. And that's how I kind of got into the whole world of online marketing and info marketing and direct response marketing. And it was during that time at MindValley that I learned what copywriting was and what an incredible skill it was. At the company, I was never an official copywriter. I went from customer service to doing some pay-per-click advertising to doing project management to business management. And then when I left 3.5 years later, it was not 6 months, but 3.5 years later, I was creative director at MindValley. And then leaving MindValley and starting my own consultancy company, I realized that copy was such a need for all of my clients. And I sort of had already learned a bit of the ropes while at MindValley, but decided to really, make that my core focus in my business, and the rest was history.
I have so many questions. First of all, I love that you listen to that little voice. I know that a lot of people experience that. Maybe they're already in a business that doesn't feel aligned, or they're in a career and something just feels off. how did you know to listen to that? Would you consider yourself a really intuitive person? And how do you go about engaging in that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think what it came down to is, I guess I'm intuitive, but I think we're all intuitive. I think we're all intuitive, and it's just a matter of whether or not you listen to it, right? Because I feel like you're intuitive when you listen to it and then you go, I knew it, and then when you don't listen to it, you still might say, I knew it, but it, doesn't feel as good. And I think the difference is really just listening to it. And I think for me, the decision really came because I was looking at the path in front of me and I wasn't excited by it. And I think so many times we make decisions for what we feel or what we think is best. And I came from a very academic family. I was telling myself a lot of stories that I needed to be a lawyer because that's just what my parents expected of me. That was all just bullcrap. Like nothing. My parents never said to me, you absolutely have to be a lawyer or we're going to disown you. But it's just so funny, the stories we tell ourselves. And so I would say to people, like, really ask yourself, what stories are you telling yourself that actually aren't serving you? And then look at the path ahead of you. And if you keep going down the path you're on and it doesn't feel right, it's not magically one day going to change. And deciding to do something different is often the harder thing to do, but it's so much more fulfilling and rewarding in the long run if you're doing what feels right and in alignment with that path you want to be on.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you use joy as your compass. Like, I don't want to move towards that career because I don't feel excited about it. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're ever in doubt, like, that's what you should go off of, is the feeling that you get when you think about it.
And I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think that it must have been a pretty scary move to go to such a faraway place at a young age. And I can actually see in your astrology chart that you do well traveling abroad. And so I'm guessing that you have spent even more time abroad, or at least traveling abroad. Is that right?
Yeah, so what I didn't say was, before I graduated from university, I had spent that last year of my undergrad degree living in Vienna, Austria. And that was part of the reason why I was like, is law school for me? Because I had just spent a year living in this incredible country, and it was the first time I had left home without my parents, really, other than like a girls' trip to Mexico when I was 17, which, when I think back now, is a horrible decision that my parents let me do that. But I went to Europe, and I was terrified, but it was so much fun. And when I came back and was starting to get my application ready for law school, I was like, wait a second, I think I want to do more of that. And that's all I knew, right? I think a lot of people were like, well, how did you decide that you wanted to get into marketing? And to be honest, I didn't decide I wanted to get into marketing. I decided that I wanted to travel because that's what brought me joy. And that led me to an internship at a company that happened to be a marketing company. So it's funny how, like you said, when you use joy as your compass, that was truly it. It was like, I have never felt more alive than when I was traveling. And also I was young, and it was, I didn't have as many commitments as someone who, say, wants to make a career shift when they're in their 30s or 40s. But I think it's the same. The feeling is the same. It's just, you have a few more hoops to jump through in terms of making that decision when you have more commitments at home. But yeah, it was scary, and also one of the most rewarding times of my life.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, that you did follow that joy, but you didn't have all the steps laid out. I think people they're waiting to have the steps before they make the change, before they make the decision. And I'm like, the path doesn't appear until you take that step.
Absolutely.
And so you get stuck when you're in the mind and you're just trying to make the decision based off of what you see in front of you. But, there's so much more that appears once you're already there.
It's so true.
And I can see that it's really emotionally fulfilling for you to travel. And I think also, even studying, I would say that higher education and like really diving deep into studying for you is super important, because you have your moon, which rules your emotional stability, in the 9th house of foreign travel and like living abroad and higher education. And it's in Taurus. So I would say that you're a really emotionally stable person. Even though you have Leo, which is like quite fiery and energetic, your internal side would be actually really calm and stable, and make others feel really comfortable around you, and really creative. I see a lot of creativity all throughout your chart, which is So cool. And obviously I can see that even with you just buying your iPad and sketching on it, I can see all the creativity come out for sure.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned about having like watching the stories that we tell ourselves. So I'm wondering, what kind of different story did you have to tell yourself when you pivoted from working somewhere for 3 years, moving up in the ranks really quickly, doing really well, and I'm sure being a star in MindValley, and then pivoting to doing your own work? I mean, that's obviously a scary jump for some people. So what new stories did you have to rewrite for yourself, like in your mindset, basically?
Yeah. The one that's really coming to me really clearly is I felt like all the success that I had gotten or had received at MindValley was a fluke. Like, I kind of believed that, even though it's so crazy looking back, like, of course, I made the decision on my own to move to Malaysia. I got the job. I, did a good job and got promoted multiple times. But it was kind of like, I believed that one person who was Vishen, who is the founder of MindValley, I was like, well, he was just giving me a lot of breaks because like him and I are friends, and it's just because he was being nice. Like, it's just so crazy the things that you tell yourself, because it's easier to believe that, like, at least for me, that someone was just kind of being nice than to believe that I really got there on my own merit. And then I had this really big story that I was too young, which is such bullshit. Oh my God, it makes me so mad even when I think about it right now. Like, I left MindValley when I was 20. So I left MindValley when I was 26, I think. And I left as the, creative director. So I was the creative director of a multi-million-dollar company at age 26. Well, 25. And then I left when I was 26. And it took me a long time to really put myself out there in a big way after leaving MindValley. And it was because, one, I wanted to prove that I could do it on my own without just immediately, riding on the coattails of this big, well-known company that everyone knows, even though there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it was all true. I did do that. But I was sort of like, no, I need to do this on my own. And I was sort of afraid to put myself out there because I don't know why I was telling myself this story that I was too young and no one would take me seriously. And and it would come up, I'd go to conferences and, male-dominated industry, and, I'd get oh, who are you here with, sweetie? And, like, what company do you work for? And, you're so young. And, and in my head, I'm like, wow, like, I really started believing some of the things I was hearing, that I was too young to make a difference, and that I just needed to study more and learn more. And then, then my business would really take off. And it wasn't until I finally was like, you know what, enough is enough. I'm going to do what I want to do and put myself out there creatively, start my YouTube channel, that I really started realizing, like, wow, actually people do like to hear what I have to say. And, it's just such a lesson in not believing that voice inside that tells you it's not the right time, or you're not good enough, and even the most confident, when I say that to people are like, what? No way. Like, no one believes me. And it's like, no, girl, like, I talked about starting my YouTube channel for months before I actually did it. And then when I did it, I was terrified. And then I did, the whole time, it was a scary process. And I think no matter what, you're always going to have doubt. So it's just kind of doing it anyway.
Yes. Oh, I love that you say that, especially because you are a Leo, and Leos definitely are one of the most confident signs out there. And so I think on the surface, it can seem like you just have all of your shit together. But then, we're all human at the end of the day. And I think that people kind of put others on a pedestal, and they think, oh, they have achieved all this, and like they're always confident and they always feel good. But it's really nice to hear that you're just human like everyone else, and you've had to shed a lot of the old stories in order to step into that badass CEO version of yourself and really own your power and like own your worth. And that's very intimidating, walking into a room and being younger and a female, and when it's male dominated, and holding your own. So what did you do? Like, did you actually do anything in your daily practice, or to shift that mindset to go from, I'm trying to start something on my own, to, I'm a CEO. Like, this is my business.
I think, there was always and again, it just goes to the duality that we all have within us. Like, I think there was always that voice in my head that was like, no, I'm a badass. Like, I'm meant to be doing more. But then it's like, well, no, I'm not ready, or no, it's not the right time. Or, and honestly, I think the biggest shift I noticed is the people in my life. So, you know, not to throw my ex-boyfriend under the bus because he's great, but I realized that when I was with him, I played a lot smaller. I don't really know why. I feel like, you know, he didn't feed the voice in me that was like, you're a badass, you should put yourself out there. Instead, he fed the other voice in me that, and I don't know why that was, you know, he was a great guy and is a great guy. But as soon as that relationship ended, I felt like, oh my gosh, it's a rebirth. And oftentimes that happens, I think, for us, right? When we look back at the major shifts that have happened in our lives, like we can sometimes almost pinpoint, like for me, it's, you know, moving to Malaysia or going to Vienna and then moving to Malaysia and then moving back. And then a couple key relationships that like were like massive, like, you know, traffic recontrollers in my life. And I think, you know, I started really realizing that the people that I surround myself with and, you know, what voice they choose to echo back at me was such a powerful shift. And, you know, that's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who works in education, and she was expressing just difficult working relationships and the types of personalities that she has to deal with. And I felt so blessed because when you're an entrepreneur, you know, you don't often get all that validation and that pat on the head, like you're doing a great job, like I got while I was at MindValley. But you get to pick who you do business with and who you align with and who your students are and who, you know, and that just helps you more fully and powerfully step into the person you want to become. And then you naturally just start attracting more of those people in your life, you know? So I think it was a mix of me obviously just putting myself out there and taking the actions, but also surrounding myself with people who were rooting me on along the way.
Yes. I know. I think confidence always comes from taking the steps, you know, it doesn't come from like always the hyping yourself up, but actually just putting your nose to the grindstone and kind of letting the self-doubt be muted because you're so busy working.
Yeah.
Like you don't have time to let yourself down.
That's such a good point. Like, I think a lot of people, they get stuck in that like paralyzed state of like not starting, and they're consuming so much, you know, personal development and okay, I'm going to do it. And it's like, until you just do it, like you'll never experience that feeling that you're doing it well or right. And I still am my own biggest, you know, critic, and I do things that I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so silly. Like, why did I do that or whatever? And when you're getting positive feedback and from the steps you are taking, that drowns out the inner critic, like you said, or you just get so busy, or you'll have one student or one you know, follower or one whatever send you a comment that just makes your whole day, and you're like, that's why I do it. You know, you just kind of get that constant recognition, and I think that's so true. I mean, people even ask me like, why did you start your YouTube channel? And it's funny because now I can think of a million reasons why I started it because of the path that has opened up for me. But when I started it, I had no idea why I was starting it. Like, it wasn't this big strategic move. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to grow an empire of copywriters. Like, I was literally just like, I know it's an edge for me. I want to be more creative and express myself in this way. I think I'll like it, so I'm going to try it. You know, I'm not going to commit to doing it like forever, but I'll do it for like a month and see how, and then I'll do it for 2 months and then 3 months. And then every video kept just, again, like giving me a little bit more of that recognition and validation that what I was doing was being well received, and that fueled me to keep going.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I wrote like some definitions or some jobs for people who have their sun in Leo, and one of them I put was YouTuber.
Funny.
And yeah, I just think that Leos do really well in front of a crowd. Like there's just have a natural leadership quality to them. And it's interesting because your sun is in the 12th house, which is normally like a more hidden house or more like subdued, but it could also be the house of spirituality. And I definitely think, given all the work that you do, in the new age and like spiritual realm, I think that fits so much. Like it's just so in line with who you are as a person. And also you have Mars there too, which means that you're going to be really motivated the more that you do this, and that you explore, first of all, being a leader and being out there and being on YouTube, but also spiritual topics. I think you would feel even more motivated by that. So it's interesting that you don't just cover spiritual topics. So you cover about writing about spiritual topics, copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because your sun is conjunct Mercury, which is the planet of writing, communication, the way that you think. So the way that you think is I would say it's quite spiritually inclined. So that's just naturally who you are. And then you've paired that with your natural ability to write and be an effective communicator. And so I think that it's just so powerful to see that in your chart. And you also have Gemini, which is the communication sign in your 10th house of career. So you're just meant to teach people and communicate, and definitely teaching, because you, with your moon in the ninth, and the ninth house also has a lot to do with teaching. I think that actually you would get some of your greatest soul satisfaction from not just leading others, but being a teacher. And so it's no surprise that you started the Copy Posse Academy. Is that correct? The launch pad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a part of that. And it's such a great program. You guys have to join. I think you have the files that you can download now. Definitely do that. She also has Virgo in the first house, which is all about being very useful and practical, and a super perfectionist. So everything is very detailed, very organized. Don't worry, you're getting your money's worth when you join.
That's the Virgo.
Which is awesome. Virgo is such a great quality to have in the workplace. So how do you, like, what's your advice for beginning copywriters or for business owners who are trying to incorporate, new copywriting skills to sell their products?
Yeah, that's such a good question. My biggest piece of advice would be, at the end of the day, don't sacrifice the authentic communication and messaging and what you're trying to say for copywriting tactics and strategies. And I think there's always this like line, right, in copywriting. And as I'm reading copy, I can always tell when a copywriter is coming first from a place of, big picture, what is it that I'm trying to say? And then writes in a really beautiful way, and then layers on top the copywriting, strategies and best practices, versus coming in from the perspective of, I'm just going to write something that from a copywriting perspective is amazing, but they're not really attached to the message. And it reads like we've all read it. We've all read those sales pages that are just kind of choppy. Like, I'm not really getting the point, but I see you're using a lot of exclamation marks and buy nows, but I'm not connected to what it is that you're saying. And so the first thing I always say to anybody who wants to write copy is, write about a topic that you're interested in. So if you're a copywriter who wants to be a freelance copywriter, pick a niche, like something that you're truly aligned with. And same with business owners. I mean, business owners are even better in that sense because they have such a clear understanding of what it is that they're trying to sell. And obviously, because it's the heart of their business, and it's, the communication is the soul of your business. But starting with the message, and then you can always learn how to improve it to make it a bit more powerful and for it to land better using copywriting tactics. And so, you've heard me say this a million times before, like, to write copy, you have to write bad copy and then fix it. There's no such thing as just sitting down and writing this like perfectly, perfect sales page in an hour and being done with it. But coming from empathy is the biggest thing. So I think freelancers looking to write copy for other people, this is where it's really, I think it's really powerful to pick a niche so that you can feel aligned with what you're writing about, because if not, you'll get bored real fast.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so much better when you are a business owner because you're so invested. You're the most invested anyone would be as far as copywriting is concerned. So what mistakes have you seen for, beginning business owners or people who aren't really good with copywriting yet? Like, what are the most common things that you see and your best ways to avoid those or make them better?
That's a good question. I think the first thing that I see a lot is this gap between getting you get the attention of your audience, whether it's you send out an email or you're posting an ad on Facebook, and then you immediately are like, buy this thing. And there's this disconnect where, I'm sure everyone who's into copywriting has heard of this, but I'm not sure if anyone else has, so I'll quickly explain it. There's something called the AIDA framework. I didn't come up with it, but it's attention, interest, desire, action. And if you think of that framework as being the necessary process that everyone has to go through in order to take any sort of action at all, they have to be first aware of it. Then they have to have an interest in it. Then they have to have a desire for it. Then they'll take action. And so a lot of times people will build a website, for example, that's like, buy my product. And then they're like, okay, now I have to get traffic to the site. And so they go, spend some money on Facebook. And then they're wondering why no one's buying. And so there's really, this is why copywriting is so important. It's anyone can write buy now. And anyone can go randomly spend money on Facebook and buy clicks to your site. But what copywriters do is they take the awareness and they translate it into interest and desire, which I think so many people they skip over those two. And it's because it's hard. It's like, I don't know. And that's why it's so important to know who your customer avatar is and know who you're speaking to. And more than that, knowing their level of awareness in the market of how well they know your business and brand. Because if they know you really well, like, for example, you, Courtney, for your students, subscribers, followers, they know who you are. You could launch a product and you don't need to do, a whole bunch of, introducing yourself. You just share a bit of the story of why you created it, and you can create, you can sell an offer. But I think that's the biggest thing is there needs to be a clear, you need to beautifully bring people along the buying journey in a way that meets them where they're at and then pulls them through interest and desire so that they take action. I would say if that's the biggest thing. And I know everyone wants to know like the magic 3 words to get people to buy and the exact headlines you have to use and there's a million templates out there, and I think templates are helpful for copywriting when you're just starting out and you really want to kind of know what okay, that headline template works or whatever. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter if you're not meeting your audience where they're at and using words to create interest and desire for what it is that you're offering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful parts about your course is that it doesn't just piecemeal. It doesn't just look at copywriting. Okay, here's a sales page, and then here's a headline. You do go through those things, but we also get the broader picture of how all the sales work together and the mindset behind the customer. And I think if you don't have that broader picture and you don't take a step back, you can kind of get lost in like the tactics and not actually produce something that your customer wants, or you don't write in a way that's directed towards, like you said, the awareness of the customer. That was really big for me to have the realization I need to be very careful about how I create the sales page because I eventually want to have ads to it. Mm-hmm. And if I have ads, I really can't assume that everyone knows what astrology does. And certainly not a lot of people know that your business has an astrology chart. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to include all the education behind it. And originally that wasn't part of the sales page. And so I think, like you said, knowing where your customer's journey is going is the most important place to begin.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and also, like you said, knowing your customer avatar, like actually what words they use, I think is the most powerful thing because they just want to see themselves in what you're selling. So if you can use their words, that's going to be the thing that to me makes them most likely to buy over any like fancy tactics.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, one of the best pieces of advice I could give anyone who's writing copy is, and I did this with the launch of my program, the Copy Posse Launchpad, is I did a survey to my audience and asked them what their biggest challenges were and, had them fill out all these different questions and used that as the baseline to launch my program because I wasn't guessing. I knew exactly what my audience wanted. But then someone in my mastermind, I run a mastermind group, and someone gave me an idea, which is so brilliant. He did the same thing, but he didn't have multiple choice answers. He left it open-ended. And then he said, the reason why you do that is your audience will tell you exactly how they describe the biggest problems that they're experiencing. So rather than say, is your biggest challenge that you lack productivity, or that you're feeling unmotivated, or that you don't know how to get clients, or that you don't know how to build a portfolio, like those are all my words. And then they have to pick the one that best fits, right? Well, he said, just ask open-ended questions, and then you can get, tools and technology or a VA to go through and like pull out, kind of categorize and pull out how they actually word their problems to you. And that was such an interesting aha for me, because they will tell you exactly, like you might find that 30 people use the exact same phrase to describe their problem. Then you just pull that into your sales copy and it's basically written for you. You want to know the pain that they're experiencing, use what their own language in your copy. Like, talk about a powerful way to be in alignment with your avatar,
Yes, I totally agree with that. Just being inside their brain, basically using their
Yeah.
exact words.
Yeah.
And you mentioned on your sales page the catch-22, like how can you become a copywriter if no one gives you a job? And I think that that's a catch-22 kind of with businesses. Like, how can you pull your audience when you're just starting out and you don't really have an audience? So that's kind of a hard question, but do you have an idea or an answer for how to go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you can start with, social media. I think the question feature in Instagram stories is a great way to get really direct feedback. So even if you have a tiny small following, you can still ask. You can actually use a survey so for me, when I was building my list, I didn't have an offer to sell on the back end of my opt-in page. So I actually just put the survey there. So I just pulled people as they were coming in. So anytime if you can create something high value that you can give away, you can build your list in the process. Even spend a little bit of money driving ads if you wanted to your free lead magnet, or what I call high value promise, your landing page. And then on the opposite side of the landing page, have a survey. Because, you might be spending a little bit of money on the front end with Facebook ads to get traffic, but the wisdom that you're getting on the other side of that, I think, is really, really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I notice that some people are scared to pay money for stuff like that. And it's just the value that goes into the front end makes it so much more of a valuable product afterwards. Like, when you're actually going to sell it, people actually want to buy that. So talking about YouTube, because I know that you have a YouTube account and your videos are really well organized, and obviously you can tell that you're a really great communicator in them. But what's your strategy behind them? How do you like link these to your products, or how do you go about creating the ideas? Any kind of, I guess, general advice for content marketing strategies via YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the first couple months, I just was guessing, because I didn't have an audience to ask, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to start with a couple like really broad topics when it comes to copywriting. So like, what is the difference between copywriting and content writing, and how to write headlines, and top 5 copywriting books. But then once I started growing a bit of an audience, to be honest, a lot of my content marketing strategy now is just in direct response to what people are asking for. But other times it'll come not because people want a video topic on it, but I'll get like the same question 18 times in my DMs on Instagram and be like, oh, that's a video topic. Or one of, my Launchpad students, like Michael K, asked, oh, can you do a video on this topic? I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, So I kind of, inspiration comes all over the place. And it's funny because my videos, there's definitely a mix between sort of copywriting tutorials and then a little bit more on the like motivation side, which is sort of probably just natural for me because I come from I love personal development, spirituality, and I come from a personal development copywriting background. And I find I'm just really, I try to have a pulse on the community and what they're asking for as much as possible. But when it comes to the type of content too, I got some really great wisdom from my friend Sarah Crisp, who runs the YouTube channel Wholesale TED. So she teaches e-commerce and dropshipping education on YouTube. And I had asked her that. I'm like, how how specific do you get with your, is every single video about drop shipping and e-commerce? And she said that she'll do a few videos every now and again that target a more broad audience that, aren't necessarily specifically about those topics, but that would appeal to a more unaware, we could call it, right? A more unaware audience. And that was a really big takeaway for me, because I was in that kind of zone too, where, if I'm only creating content for my current subscribers, it's so hyper specific. Like, they want to know stuff like research tips for copywriting, which are so specific, and my subscribers love that, but it's not a great growth strategy because you're not bringing in any fresh meat, because like very few people are typing in research tips copywriting, or what. It's not a video that gets like high volumes and shows up on YouTube's browse page, so every now and again I'll throw in a video that's just like a little bit broader, like ways to make money from home, for example, whereas copywriting would be one of them. And that video topic is much broader, appeals to a much broader audience. And those would be the videos that sort of get a more of a general audience and tend to have a slightly higher subscription rate, because I'm bringing in more fresh meat.
And do you track all that? Like, do you have Excel sheets or anything to track new subscribers? And
I don't. I just use YouTube Studio app. They have a mobile app and the YouTube Studio and the desktop. And when I have time, I go in and I'll just go look at the last like 5 or 10 videos that I did and just be like, oh, that one's doing better than I expected. I wonder why. And I'll try to like reverse engineer it. It's definitely not a science. I think I'm a funny YouTuber in that sense, because I do have a lot of friends who are YouTubers who, it's their whole business. And so they know their metrics like the back of their hand. They know what their average retention rate is. They know like all of it. And for me, I see it as sort of a channel in my business, or a medium, but it's like a smaller part of what my business is. So I don't spend as much time in it if I did, I'm sure I could probably have even better results, but I do it for fun and because I enjoy it, and I don't want it to stress me out. I think once you start looking at stats too much, especially for something like YouTube, where once it's posted, it's posted. It's not like I can go back and re-record a video. Like, all you can really do is carry forward learnings. You can't, it's not like a sales page where you're like, well, that's not converting, I'm going to go rewrite it,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like the only thing metrics are really good for in that case is seeing more of what works and trying to duplicate that. Mm-hmm. But I love that you have more of a creative approach to it, and it's less like systematic, I guess, which it just makes it more from the heart. So I have a question about the biggest lesson that you've learned through your business. Like, have you had a big failure or just something that was a big hurdle to overcome that taught you a lot?
That's a good question. I'd say my biggest lesson was to pull the trigger at 80%. I still have businesses that have not really gotten off the ground because, there's always something else that you could do. And it's scary because you want to start something, and then if it's not immediately successful, you want to be like, okay, I'm going to do something different. And I can tell you that just starting and then letting the evolutionary process happen, and staying committed and consistent. I think that's the biggest thing is knowing you can evolve. So it's, if it's not perfect, who cares? And then trusting that if it's not a success right away, that if it feels really good and it brings you joy and all of that, that, you'll get there. I highly recommend you don't do anything that doesn't bring you joy, because I think there's the other side of that where it's like, don't just keep doing something if you really, really don't like doing it. But yeah, I think getting out of your own way and just doing it, but also being consistent. I was really afraid of commitment for a long time. I sort of, after I left MindValley, I was like, I'm a traveler. I don't want to commit to any one place for too long. I didn't didn't have a big bottle of shampoo. I was like, and so committing to anything, even like a YouTube channel, felt impossible, because how will I commit to creating a high quality, produced video every single week if I don't have a home base? And I realized that my fear of commitment was showing up in so many areas of my life. And I really kind of was attaching this idea of freedom to, the fact that I love to travel, and I liked that I only worked with a few high level clients, and I didn't have to, it was like kind of the writer's dream, and I kind of got there. But then I sort of plateaued where, I was getting clients, I was able to travel the world and write, which I realize is so many people's dreams. And I got there and was like, okay, but I never really set my sights higher on anything different until a couple years ago, and finally just like leaned in to the commitment of it. Like leaned in to be like, what would it look like if I actually made this a commitment, or if I, actually committed to doing a YouTube video once a week, or committed to whatever it is for you, who are listening, is make the commitment, and then don't be afraid if it fails. Because I think a big part of it for me too is probably the Leo in my chart, is I was so afraid of what if I commit and everyone knows I commit and then it fails and then everyone knows I'm a failure. It was like this big fear of like, what will people think? It's like all the voices that come into your head, and now looking back, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I did it anyway, but I wish I would have done it sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you say, it takes time and consistency, because I think like you were mentioning, it is more exciting and more fun to just start a new business and like pivot. Because then you're like, okay, that's not working, let's try this. And you never actually have to fully devote to something. And so there's not really a failure there. Like you're just like, oh, I'm just changing. And then if you really give your all to something and it doesn't work out, then you're opening yourself up to so much disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people kind of fail before they start because they're too scared to really
commit to
it. Like
I mean, how often does this happen to you? Like, I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to this, because I know I've been there. You buy like 1,200 domain names and you're like, oh, I'm just going to launch a new website. And I was having this chat with a really good friend of mine yesterday, I think. She's like, I'm going to launch this new website. I'm like, but you just launched your other website. She's like, I know, but I don't really like it. I'm like, well, fix it then. Come on. Like, you got this, And I think it's like the shiny new, I want to do something shiny and new, and it's going to be so exciting. But if you're, I think, to put things into perspective, like, I think a lot of people maybe, let's say, who find my YouTube channel and maybe sign up for my program, it's like this, oh, well, you're at this level, like like, it's like I magically, it happened overnight. And to be honest, or that, they just found me and I was an expert, and I've always been an expert. Of course, I've been at this for a long time, but I started my YouTube channel February 13th of 2019. And it took me 6 months of a video every single week to get to 1,000 subscribers. Like, that's crazy. Like, when I look back now, I'm like, whoa. But I really enjoyed what I was doing. And because I enjoyed what I was doing, I was able to commit to it and didn't give an F, like, if people thought I had failed or succeeded, because I was truly doing what I felt I was in, like, what was in alignment with me. And then it was like the universe, the YouTube gods, after 6 months of, and I think they do this. I think it's like, okay, you've proven yourself. You've proven to be a consistent content creator. We'll give you more love now. And then, after 1,000, it kind of started really growing. And I was like, I have no idea if the algorithm does that, but that's really how it felt. It was like, all right, you've done your dues. You've published however many videos for 6 months straight. And now we'll give you more views and more subscribers.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is you have to put in the sweat equity. And I think it's almost like a way of the universe kind of weeding out the people who aren't really aligned with that mission. If you're not really aligned, you're not going to keep going after it day after day for years if people aren't showing up. But if it's totally in alignment with you, you'll be there regardless. And then eventually the success comes, hopefully.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of ways. It's kind of like, I poke fun of this in my last video, but it's like, yeah, there are ways to make $1 million online in a day. I know many people who have done it, but guess what? It wasn't like they started and then 24 hours they made $1 million. It's like they started and then they took the time and the money and the team and the resources and they built something. And then they probably spent a lot of money to get traffic to that site to make the $1 million. You know what I mean? And so I think it's just perspective. I think it's easy to look at what other people are doing and assume that somehow they have something that you don't. And it's bullshit. everyone listening to this right now has exactly what they need already to build a business, to start copywriting, to whatever it is that, is the big goal for you. And the biggest thing in your way is yourself. And once I realized that, it was like, oh my God, like it's so easy to blame other people or other things or other circumstances. I mean, the fact that I didn't have a YouTube wall held me back for like 2 months. I was like, I need to have the perfect stuff hanging on my wall behind me so that I look professional. Like, seriously. I mean, it's the silliest things like that you just find an excuse. And then one weekend I was like, this is the stupidest excuse I've ever heard. Like, I'm going to the nearest like shop, like a bookstore down the street, and I'm buying some quotes, whatever. Like literally, like people ask me like, what do the quotes mean? I'm like, they were just on sale. I don't know.
That's so funny.
Like I like them, everything you can imagine is real. Yes, that's true. You did not wake up to be mediocre. Totally. But like, it's not, it was like finally just one day I was like, I'm getting out of my own way and I'm doing this.
Yeah. And I like that you said that, because I think that a lot of people will have so many excuses. They're like, let me just buy this one more course and, let me study a little bit more, or let me do this first. And they are willing to invest all of their time into consumption, but they don't take the action to start seeing results.
Yeah.
And you can keep learning, but you're not applying.
It's got to be parallel. Yeah, it's got to be parallel, because you'll notice that kind of happens, right? Like you'll learn a bit, then you'll take action. And honestly, I'll look back at some of the first stuff I ever wrote and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe people paid me for that. Like, really? And then you learn, and then you learn, and then you take action, then you learn, and then you take action. And then through taking action and getting feedback, you're learning even more. And it's so hard to communicate that to people, right? And I think too, because everyone has a course to sell. And when people ask me like, what's the best way to learn? I'm like, get out there and do it. Like really, that is absolutely the best way.
Yeah, it's the best way. It's the slow way if you don't, learn from anyone else. I do think it's beneficial to take the action, but then again, like you said, take the course. Because if I did take your copywriting course, I think I could still learn it eventually, but it would be so much slower.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's like accelerated learning and also access. Like, my friend Jay Klaus talks about this, that in order to be successful at anything, you need the education around it, like a new skill, but you also need access to either the people who can teach it to you, and also, access to a wider range of, experts or clients, and I think that that's such an interesting perspective to look at it. Like, you shouldn't be joining programs just for necessarily the training, even though that's really important, but looking for how is that going to accelerate your access that you need in order to get what you want, whether that be more clients or more resources to build your business or whatever that might be,
Yeah, exactly. Like you mentioned that you would add us to your Rolodex for some of your writers. And I think that's a huge selling point, because I mean, even though it's online, it really is all about networking at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so it makes a huge difference who you know.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have, I think, like one more question, maybe two. So what is a tool or software that you use in your business that you think has just been the best investment for you and saved you so much time?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, one free tool I use, and you know about this because you're in the program, but is Hemingway Editor. So that I love for editing copy. It tells you where your sentences are getting too long. It shows you where you're using passive voice instead of active voice. And that's just completely free. It's like hemingwayapp.com or something like that. If you Google Hemingway Editor, you'll find it. And then in terms of a tool that has made my life really easy is Kajabi. I tried and researched a few different membership platform tools, and Kajabi, I was just really impressed with it. It's a little bit pricier, but it sort of has all of the solutions that I need. And I was blown away, to be honest, because so I come from like the old school days where there was no turnkey solutions for anything like this. So at MindValley, everything was built custom. And this was back in 2008, 2009. And everything was built custom. And so then when I started my consultancy company and started working with clients, I was working with a lot of bigger clients that also had custom solutions. And it was only lately that I started really researching some of these tools because I was launching my program. And I'm like, wow, like there is no excuse for anybody. Like they make it so easy, like it's like sales page app, no problem. Integrate with your MailChimp account. Don't worry about it. Integrate with your Stripe account. No problem. Like I was just blown away. I really was. It's so much easier to make money. It's interesting. It's so much easier to make money online today than it was from a technology perspective, but harder, obviously, just from a pure market, saturation perspective. But just, I think Kajabi is great.
Yeah, you're so right. There's a lower barrier of entry, but that makes it so much more competitive once you're inside.
Exactly.
Kajabi is great because it has so many tools integrated into one. So do you host your actual website on there as well?
I don't actually. So I host my website. It's just on WordPress. But I use Kajabi I used it to build my membership site, and then I use it to build sort of any ancillary pages that are needed that I don't currently have in WordPress.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very cool. So what do you have coming up for you? Because I know that you're about to finish the live version of the course and you have files available for people to download now, right?
Yeah. So I had a lot of people reach out to me after the doors closed to the Copy Posse Launchpad, being like, how can I get in? How can I get in? And obviously the doors were closed, and you guys would have been like, who the hell is this, if I would have started letting people in week 2. But I decided just because of, everything that's kind of going on right now, I think now is such a great time to learn a new skill. And so I made the recordings of the Copy Posse Launchpad available at a discount. And then, at this point, I'm trying to decide when I'm going to next do a second season of the live Copy Posse Launchpad. Probably January of next year, although I've had a lot of people requesting for maybe this fall, but we'll see. But I think what I'm really excited about is to kind of stick with the high level content creation. I'm really enjoying that. So obviously continuing with the live coaching program. But then I also want to create a business marketing course for business owners. Because I know people like you and a couple other business owners in the group. I'm like, oh man, I feel like you guys are ready for a higher level of marketing training, which is really exciting. And that's the stuff that I geek out on. Like I could talk about, sales psychology and marketing and positioning in businesses all day long. And so I think that might be next for me is coming up with a business marketing course. But I kind of just see how it goes. I almost need to sit down and do a bit of a visioning session to map up the rest of this year, but 2020 has been nutty so far. So it's like 1 week at a time at this point.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I was really hoping that you would do something like some spinoff specifically for businesses, because the copywriting, I think it all applies. So it's not like it doesn't work for business owners. But I just feel like you have so much untapped knowledge from you running your own business and like higher level stuff about like how to set up your marketing strategy that I feel like would be super beneficial. And that is very exciting to hear that you're thinking about.
Yes. It's definitely happening. It's just a matter of when at this point, but you'll be the first to know.
Okay, cool. All right. And then where can everybody find you?
So my website is just alexcattoni.com. So my name, and then on YouTube, Alex Cattoni, and on Twitter, Alex Cattoni, and on Facebook, Alex Cattoni, and then on Instagram, I'm at Copy Posse.
Yeah, and for the listeners, Cattoni has 2 T's.
Yeah, Cattoni. That's right.
And the very last question, if you could give someone their next steps, like after they finish this call, what are their next steps that you would say, okay, if you want to get started with copywriting, do this first?
I would say go subscribe to my channel. And then I would really spend some time thinking about, what that would look like. Like, I know everyone wants to get into copywriting. A lot of people want to get into copywriting because, and this is all true, oh my gosh, it's a job that I can do from anywhere and I can travel the world and I can make money. And yes, that's all true. But really start thinking about how you want to use that medium to communicate a powerful message and what type of businesses you want to serve. Because as soon as you can get in alignment with that, everything else really becomes easier. If you focus on, just making a bunch of money and making that the be all end all, it's like you'll never get started because you'll never be really in alignment with what you want to create. So I would say that. And then just, start studying, but don't fall down the rabbit hole of studying too much. I think it's a lot about taking first steps and putting yourself out there and finding the people who will advocate for you and possibly find a client, and anything you can do to really put yourself out there.
Yes, and take your course.
And absolutely take my course.
That is the next step, guys. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on here and for all of your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.